You read the title correctly. Today, we are scaling rocks. Literally. Rocks are a natural substance composed of solid crystals of different minerals that have been fused together into a solid lump. Rocks can be categorized into different groups based on their sizes, and these groups are clay, silt, sand, granules, pebbles, cobbles, boulders, and rock outcrops. Individual clay, silt, and sand particles are very low in the scale, even if they were thrown at someone, but they would still be above the lowest tier, which is tier 11, due to existing in the third-dimensional plane as an object. A granule thrown at a person, or also known as a tier 10 entity, would not do much, and therefore it would be below tier 10 as well, but slightly above the previously mentioned ones. A pebble thrown at a tier 10 entity could hurt, but it still won't be anything serious unless the thrower is a superhuman. An average person should be able to take a hit from a pebble easily, but it would still be a lot painful. But if a cobble were to be thrown at someone, then shit could get serious. An average cobble could range anywhere from 6.4 centimeters to 25.6 centimeters, or 2.5 inches to 10.079 inches. Might not seem that big until one of these would crack your head open. A cobble, especially the bigger ones, would be lethal and could also lead to death if any vital spot is hit with it, and therefore it can defeat a tier 10 entity. Even though if hit properly, a cobble should be extremely serious, and possibly even causing death to a person. There are certain individuals who train their self to take on such stuff, and such people belong in the category of tier 9C, which is part of the 9th tier, also known as superhuman tier. So cobbles won't be able to reach tier 9, and would stop at tier 10, but the next one won't stop there. Next in line are boulders, and an average boulder would range from 25 centimeters to even several meters, and if dropped on a tier 10 entity, it would straight out flatten them. A big boulder can even flatten a tier 9C entity, and even crush the level above it, which is wall level, and would even destroy a small building which basically falls under tier 9A. Even though it won't completely destroy a structure of that level, it can still do marginal damage to it, and we are talking about an average boulder here. The biggest boulder in the world, called the Giant Rock, is nearly 5,800 square feet big, or 538 square meters, and 7 stories high. So it on itself is of tier 8C, or building level. And if we are talking about dropping this monstrosity, then we are getting to a higher scale with it. A rock nearly 7 stories tall, of 5,800 square feet, which weighs about 30,000 tons, dropped over a city from few meters high, would be extremely catastrophic. Not only would it crush all the building and structures under it, it would shake the ground, literally, and shoot debris at high speeds, which would spread through a city, and also cause a chain reaction of large infrastructures getting destroyed and falling onto nearby structures, and so on, causing city-wide destruction. Even though it won't completely destroy a city, it would deal a great chunk of damage to it, but a factor to be considered is also the size of a city. A small city would be completely affected, whereas a large one would take great losses, but not be completely affected. So overall impact from a rock of such size would scale from low 7B to mid 7B. So that was about boulders. Next in the hierarchy is rock outcrops, which are at max several kilometers in size. So, yeah, we are talking in thousands of meters here, and this would also do damage worth of several small cities, nearly taking down an entire city. That means nearly tier 7B. Only if we drop it from some height over a city, on itself. An average outcrop is only city block level, but if we consider the big ones, then the scale would be a lot different. This is just pure scale, and not power scale. That's why we are dropping it, or throwing, so we can power scale the damage done by them. As by itself, rocks can't do shit. But all that shit out of the way, let's take an even greater mass of rocks. Let's take mountains, one of the largest rocky structure in our planet. On itself, just by the sheer scale, a mountain has a tier for itself, which is tier 7A, which is mountain level, and large mountains such as Mount Everest, K2, and others would be of high 7A. And hypothetically speaking, and only hypothetically, if we're to drop the fucking Mount Everest on a continent for the sake of our goofy hypothesis, then we can observe that a mountain of such size would trigger an apocalypse. It would destroy everything in its path while falling, and upon impact, it would create shockwaves, so strong that it would propagate throughout an entire continent, causing landslides, avalanches, and also earthquakes of high Richter scale. The impact, if nearby a water body, could even trigger a tsunami, which means not only would it affect the continent it was essentially dropped at, but also others as well. The effect of such an event would cause global-level consequences. Tectonic plates would be affected by this, causing heavy earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and many other natural disasters throughout the globe. And the result of this could also be seen with the changes in climate as well. So the scale of this is on a grand level. This is on multi-continental level scale, to even near planetary level threat. So nearly high tier 6A, as to scale up to planetary, a thing needs to be capable of creating or destroying an entire planet, which is not completely achieved by this catastrophic drop of rocky land mass. So even the largest rocks in the world are not capable of planetary destruction. So is that the peak scale for rocks? Well, if the rocks inside of the planet are not capable of doing it, then let's take rocks from outside of the world. Let's take asteroids. And mostly average asteroids are not bigger than Everest or even close to being as big as it. But we will give it a bit of assistance, which is accelerated speed. An asteroid a few hundred meters alone with 50,000 kmph would trigger a global level impact. And if we were to take an asteroid of the size of the Everest, traveling at such speed and hitting us, then it is game over for the planet. An impact of that kind would be planetary level. That means tier 5b. More than the size of the asteroid, the destructive factor is the velocity at which the space rock would be traveling towards us. That makes all the difference. Even a small rock would have planetary level impact if it has high velocity in astronomical terms. But if the rock is also a behemoth in size, then it would give us an even more horrifying collision, as there are some rocks in space which are thousands of kilometers in size. Our boy Moon is also a rock, and if it were to hit us, then that would also be a planetary level destruction event, as the Moon is approximately 1,740 kilometers. And what's bigger than a moon? A planet. The first for planets in our solar system are all terrestrial planets with rocky surfaces. Half the planets in our solar system are having rocky surface. And according estimates, there are trillions of planets in the universe. So out of the trillions, if we were to take half of the planets as rocky ones, then we have nearly hundreds of billions of planets like this. And if we were to make a hypothetical superstructure by combining all the rocky planets in the universe into one, then we would have a superstructure nearly of a few quadrillion kilometers. And if we take the size of this superstructure as 1 quadrillion km, then for light to completely travel the entire thing, it would take just 39 days, which shows how petite even this entire hypothetical thing is compared to rest of the cosmos. As to travel our galaxy, Milky Way galaxy, it would take light around 50,000 to 100,000 light years. And our galaxy is nothing in front of some of the cosmic structures out there. This entire superstructure, made up by combining all the rocky planets of the universe, is only 0.00000106885% of our galaxy. That low. So at max, this superstructure would only be tier 4A, which is multi-solar system level. Well, that is disappointing, isn't it? So to cure this disappointment, let's now go to the theoretical route. Let's bring the multiverse into the game, and not just an ordinary multiverse. Let's bring an infinite multiverse. So if we are talking about infinite multiverse, then there would be also an infinite number of planets. And out of them, rocky planets would also be infinite. So now, we have infinite rocky planets. And if we combine these infinite planets together, then we would have a planet infinite in size. So this planet would automatically be greater than the observable universe. Hence, easily, it would be tier 3A. And as the planet is infinite in size, and also is 3D, it is on high tier 3A or high universal. So our rocks are now at universal level. So why stop here? Let's go even beyond into higher dimensions. Let's go to fourth dimension, and then the fifth, and then the sixth, then the seventh, eighth, the ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th. Onwards, an infinite hierarchy of infinite rocks, one on top of another, stretching to infinity. All the cardinals, let them be olives, let them be inaccessible cardinals. Whatever level of cardinals there is always a rock on its level. So an infinite hierarchy of infinite rocks, each rock displaying a level of infinity. So basically, tier 0 boundless. So, can we go even beyond this with this hypothetical rocks? The answer is yes. A being who is all-powerful is termed as an omnipotent entity, and an omnipotent entity in my book is a being above all cardinals, all the concepts and laws, above all planes of existence, transcending all the dimensions and hierarchies, beyond logic, and completely unmatched. And note this, I am not talking about an omnipotent being like in a fictional verse. I am talking about existence of a literal omnipotent being, the sole, strongest, and most powerful entity of the entire cosmos. No tier can hold it. No scaling could scale it. This being is the literal definition of immeasurable and unscalable. It easily breaks the tiering system and is irrelevantly above it. So, the reason why I talked about an omnipotent entity is because there is a popular paradox which is called the omnipotence paradox. And in this paradox, a question is asked whether an omnipotent entity would be capable of creating a rock which even they can't lift. If the answer to this question is yes, then that would mean that the being is not all-powerful, as it is capable of creating a task which it can't do. Basically means he is not all-powerful as he can't do that task. And if the answer to this question is no, then again, the being is not all-powerful, as he is not able to create a rock which he can't lift, so he is incapable of creation a rock like that. So basically, in a logical sense, both the answers lead to proving that an omnipotent entity cannot exist, and this has created a lot of debate between the theists and atheists, and it is still going, with tons of explanations provided by both the sides. Paradoxes are meant to mindfuck people, and this one is not any different. There are countless explanations regarding it which I won't cover in this video, as this video is not about omnipotence paradox. This video is about scaling rocks. So we will take the illogical route and take an omnipotent entity as a being capable of actions which in our view would be contradictory and illogical, but possible for a being of that caliber to do. So a being on that caliber would be able to create an unliftable rock and also lift it, as it is simply all-powerful. So basically, this shows a contradiction which might seem extremely illogical in our view, but you have to understand that we are talking about a being completely beyond our conceptions, as we can't even imagine a higher dimensional structure properly. Matter of fact, there are things in our own three-dimensional world which we do not understand, so we simply cannot comprehend what a being on that level would function like, and the things that it does might be illogical from our point of view, but just an ordinary task for it. So, if such an entity creates a rock which even it can't lift, then we have a rock which breaks tiering system as well, but as an entity on that level is all-powerful, they would be capable of lifting it, even though it is literally impossible to do. And as the being is all-powerful, it should be capable of creating a rock even more unliftable than the previous one, meaning even more impossible. So we are talking absolutely nonsensical stuff here. So each of these rocks would scale higher and higher into irrelevant layers and layers beyond the tiering system. But the thing is, we are talking about rocks here. Rocks are non-sentient objects, so regardless of how high they scale, it simply wouldn't matter one bit, as they simply can't do shit. They are just like Mathiverse from Flatterland. Regardless of how they scale, in a fight they can't do shit on their own, as they simply do not have sentience. They are lifeless objects, so this entire video was just purely to waste your time.